Hey cutie. Welcome back or welcome to my channel if you're new. My name is Laura. Hi, hello, welcome. It's that time of month, not that time of month, but it's time for my, it's time for my No Pan Left Behind update. And I'm really excited about this update. I made a lot of progress in September, and I have my little stats for you. I have a big stack of palettes in front of me, actually. I'm very, very happy with all the work that I put into this project over the past month. I can't wait to share my progress with you. So very quickly, what No Pan Left Behind is, I did not create this project. I don't know who created this project. Maybe Lady Pans a lot. I know I see a few people on Instagram do this. Joanna Pans is who I saw and inspired me to do this project, but I know there's a lot of people that do this project, and that is when you're trying to touch every single shade of eyeshadow within a palette. I've been working throughout my palette collection this year and trying to touch every single shade of eyeshadow within those eyeshadow palettes, and I just very briefly want to recap kind of just my stats throughout the year, just to give you some idea of how quickly I can use palettes, I guess. And again, this is a speed round. I don't want to waste all day talking about these numbers. It's a lot of numbers at once. So January, I used 6 palettes, No Pan Left Behind. Then in February, I used 4 palettes. In March, I used 5 palettes. In April, I used 4 palettes. In May, 4 palettes. June, 4 palettes. July, 5 palettes. August was a bad month. I was sick the majority of August, so I only used 3 eyeshadow palettes. So between January and August, I actually used 36 different eyeshadow palettes, and I feel like that is a huge accomplishment. And when I say use 36 eyeshadow palettes, I mean use completely. I touched every single eyeshadow shade within those palettes within those months. There were some months I dabbled into palettes here and there, but I didn't get the No Pan Left Behind, so I probably used more than those within the month's time span. Let's go down the list of palettes that I have in front of me that I used in September. And again, I have this in the order that I hit No Pan Left Behind within here. I used the Fantasy Cosmetica Druid palette, this guy here. This is such a pretty palette. I love this. I have the original packaging, so mine does not have magnetic shades, and then the writing was very hard to read. They've repackaged this, and the packaging so much cuter. Anyway, I used every single shade of eyeshadow in this one. I was very happy about it, and this is a very fall palette, so I think I want to actually put this in my actually it's open. Ooh. Then I also reached for the Natasha Denona My Dream palette in September, and I have a couple shades missing out of this palette. They're either in a magnet. Where are these? So I ended up using this palette in its entirety over the past month. This is a really pretty palette. These 2 shades I could do without, but I think this is a good one for this time of year. Summer and autumn, I think that this is a really great palette for. These have to be in a build your own palette somewhere. Then I have another Fantasy Cosmetica palette. This one is the newer style packaging where everything's magnetic, but this is the Warlock palette. This was I needed to get it done within the warmer weather months, so September was kind of girl, you gotta reach for it. So I ended up doing No Pan Left Behind in this palette as well. Kind of using in conjunction with that was this guy here, the Morphe Sour Patch Kids Sour Then Sweet. Josh bought this palette for me, which was very sweet of him. I scraped out a couple shades in this palette, but this is the Sour Then Sweet palette. Again, a rainbow palette. It's really very rainbow. This shade causes eye irritation. I do need to play and see if the red and the blue cause any irritation, but the purple definitely does, so I just scraped that out. My last Fantasy Cosmetica palette in my collection, the Fighter palette, I finally No Pan Left Behind that as well. This was very easy to just wear to the office, so that's what I did. I just basically wore this to work for the week. And I got my No Pan Left Behind in this. Really, really beautiful. It really looks like a kind of a basic Color Story palette, but every single metallic in this palette is so unbelievably sparkly and just so much more than like meets the eye just by looking at it. There's so many different like particles of color in the shimmer within like the metallic shades, and it really does look so much more special on the eyes than they do in the palette. So I really do like this palette. I'm glad I kept this one in my collection. I had a few Unearthly Cosmetic palettes that I No Pan Left Behind. The first one was a really big accomplishment in my opinion. This is the All I Ever Wanted palette. I ended up No Pan Left Behinding this palette. I had a lot of these like warmer tones left in a couple of these like greeny shades. So I just primarily use these on the lower lash line, and then these as like all over lid shades, and I really enjoyed this palette. Again, I did scrape some of the shades out of this palette, and I'm so much happier with this palette because of it, honestly. I also finished up my Unearthly, not finished up, that makes it sound way more exciting than it is, but I hit No Pan Left Behind in the Leather and Lace palette. This is such a beautiful palette. This is so like weighted as well. This is a very like heavy palette, but I really like this. I don't think they sell this anymore, but this is so beautiful. The pans are enormous in here as well. There's 32 grams of product in here and only 12 shades of eyeshadow. The pans are huge. They just blend really nicely. The shimmers, especially like Chantilly up here, is such an interesting, it's got that like pink reflect to it. It's such a beautiful, beautiful shade. I need to reach for this palette more than I allow myself to. So I mean, this is so pretty. This is just so pretty. And this is definitely like an autumnal palette in my opinion. It's like a neutral palette, because I feel like all those shades I could wear to work and be like totally in place and not feel too much. After that, I also hit No Pan Left Behind in my Heather Austin palette. This is a palette that I have a love-hate relationship with. I did not like this as much when I first got it, but it's grown on me since hitting No Pan Left Behind this year and giving myself, like pushing myself to use this. I actually like this more than I did previously. Sometimes previously when I would apply some of these shimmers, it was too much for my eyelids and they would separate no matter what, or like crease no matter what, not separate, crease no matter what. But I don't know if it's maybe my eyelids are getting a little bit more dry and I can use something like this a little bit more easily, but I didn't have that problem this year using the shades that way. Maybe the formula is drying out a little bit and it's getting better for me in my preferences, or maybe my eyelids might be getting drier and the formula just works better now. So I'm happy that I kept this palette and didn't like pass it to anyone. I had a hard time wanting to let it go. I could do without the shade Scrubs. It is a beautiful, beautiful shade, and I'm always drawn to shades like this where it's blue and purple. I'm always drawn to shades like that. This one in particular is too dark, so whenever I reach for it, I just feel like it's too much. So I struggle with this shade, and that's about it. But I mean, again, it is a beautiful shade. I just struggle reaching for it. So those 8 palettes were the palettes that I hit No Pan Left Behind with in September. And unfortunately, I didn't hit No Pan Left Behind completely in my collection in September. And I do have 2 palettes that carried over into October. But I'm filming this on October 6th, so it's been almost a week since we started the month, and I just pushed myself to actually use the other 2 palettes that were left in my collection that I hadn't hit No Pan Left Behind, because I really wanted to film like a finale of my palettes for my No Pan Left Behind. So we're not finishing up the project, but we are concluding the palette portion of my No Pan Left Behind. So I'm really happy to announce I finished hitting with the 2 last palettes over the past week. So I hit my No Pan Left Behind in Nabla Dreamy 2, which is this absolute stunner of a palette. The shade here is not the original shade. This is Glass Bowl by Colourpop. I pressed it into that pan, and I think it just goes with the palette so much more cohesively now. And I hit No Pan Left Behind in this palette, and I'm so excited. I had these 4 shades left to use within the past week, and I used them. I wore them to work, and I used them, and I was really happy with it. So that was that. Then the last palette to hit No Pan Left Behind is this guy here, and I'm actually wearing the last shades on my eye today. So this is the Maple Syrup Pancakes palette by Too Faced. This was a holiday release 2 years ago now. And this is the palette. I'm so sorry. It's such a reflective palette, so I'm trying to angle it so maybe it doesn't blind you as much. But I had 2 shades left to use in this palette. Well, I had a lot more. So the brown on the back is all the shades I needed to use in October, but I did it. So the 2 shades left for today, though, were Fork Yeah, which was the silver, which I have on my lower lash line, and then Get Sticky, which is this absolutely beautiful shade. Oh my gosh. I almost want to kick myself for like waiting till the last minute to reach for that shade. This shade is so pretty. Like, this is such a beautiful, like, I could have been wearing this to work every single day over the past year and been like super happy with it. It's so pretty. So this I have as my base shade on my eyeshadow today. It's just a really beautiful taupey rose gold kind of shade. I had 10 shades left in this palette for October, and I blew it out of the water. I really layered and made some really dynamic looks using these 2 palettes, using all of these palettes really, because I had so many shades to get through over the course of the past like month and a half. But I did it. And I hit No Pan Left Behind in all of my eyeshadow palettes now, and I feel like that deserves a nice round of applause. However, I am not done with No Pan Left Behind yet. So, unfortunately, I have not reached for every single eyeshadow in my collection yet. And I only count No Pan Left Behind for my pans of eyeshadow. Items like my loose eyeshadows and my cream eyeshadows, I do not count in there because there is no pan. I know I probably should change that because technically, like, I need to reach for those as well, but this is a hard enough project with just pans of eyeshadow, in all honesty. So what I've done is I have collected every single eyeshadow, Clionadh, or my round singles, or my depotted shades. Anything that's in this Tarte Leopard palette is a single eyeshadow that I have not used in 2024. And I'm happy because it's only this eyeshadow palette, and I have 2 very large magnetic palettes that normally house the singles. So I only have this palette left. However, it fills up the whole palette. The entire palette of singles is taken up. So without further ado, this is the eyeshadow that I need to work on still to hit No Pan Left Behind. Now, obviously, I have a type. Laura, you did this to yourself every year. You consistently have to reach for these within the last few months of the year. So why don't you just do yourself dirty in January and just use them in like cold weather season? But here we are in October, in the end half of the year, into September, or into the autumn months, and we have to use a whole heck of a lot of blue purple eyeshadows. Now, I wore a couple that I still needed to wear today, so it made the space a lot less congested, and actually it made it so this is everything. This is all of it. I did the math. I calculated out how many of each type of single shadow I need to reach for within this assortment. So out of my round singles, I have 12 shades left, which isn't bad. That's not bad. I've made a ton of progress within the round singles. I was actually very surprised that I had more Clionadh singles left to hit No Pan Left Behind, or to use No Pan Left Behind style. I have 22 Clionadh shades to use. So all in all, I have 34 different shades of eyeshadow to use within the next 3 months to completely No Pan Left Behind everything that I really want to No Pan Left Behind this year. I don't know if I'll be able to do it within a month's time frame, or if it's going to take me 2 or 3 months. So I want to check in and just show you how I've used these up. And as we progress, the quantity within this palette is going to shrink and get smaller and smaller and smaller until this is just an empty palette I hold up, and I'm very excited about that. So I hope you guys are excited to keep watching a No Pan Left Behind in a little bit different style than it's been throughout the year, as we've kind of wrapped up things in the graphical way. So yeah, I'd love to know how you're doing in your No Pan Left Behind. I know you guys are not shy about letting me know. I know some of you are doing some very challenging versions of this project. I know one of you is doing a 5-time uses in your single, so I am not on your level. We are not worthy over here. You are blowing me out of the water with that kind of concept. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you're staying healthy, sane, and safe, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye!